We're going to be getting started promptly at 5:30. We want to respect everyone's time. Want to make sure that you can hear me clearly. I'm testing the microphone. So again, those who are in the hallway can make their ways in and find your seat. Thank you so very much. We'll be getting started shortly, promptly at 5:30. All right, that's 5:30. Starting. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shirley Burks. I work here at the School of Continuing Education. I want to welcome you to the School of Continuing Education. I'll be serving as your MC tonight. So again, welcome to tonight's event for a topic that is entitled AI Won't Steal Your Job, but it will change it. Okay, thank you again. We want to thank our sponsors at the Tommy G. Thompson Center for Public Leadership. We want to appreciate their sponsorship. Again, tonight before we get started, I want to take care of some housekeeping issues. So again, we have restrooms located right outside the doors here. If you go out the back doors and to your left, they're right there. If you did park in our structure tonight, please don't leave tonight without getting a parking validation at the front desk where you first came in there. There's tickets there for you to get validated for your parking today, so make sure you stop by there before you leave. We are delighted to bring this opportunity to you for an open dialogue and information sharing. We do ask that everyone respect others' views and avoid any disruptive behavior that may inhibit the educational mission of our university. So again, we appreciate your participation, and again, we're excited about the information that we're going to share tonight. So without further ado, please join me as I welcome to the podium our Director of the School of Continuing Education, Dr. Nancy Nelson.
Thank you, Shirley. Welcome, everyone. I'm Nancy Nelson, the Provost Deputy for Continuing Education at the School of Continuing Education. And this conversation is especially meaningful to us at the UWM School of Continuing Education when our mission is to help people grow and adapt in a world shaped by innovation and change. We're thrilled to welcome attendees from across Wisconsin, 21 different states, and 3 countries. Whether you're joining us live or watching the recording later, thank you for being part of this important dialogue. Over 600 people did register for this course. Before we begin, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to thank a few key individuals and organizations who made today possible. First, please join me in thanking the entire School of Continuing Education team whose dedication to delivering impactful programming and courses that enrich our community every day. Everybody really played a part for this event within the school. We also wish to recognize the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership, and especially Alex, Ruth, and Lily for their generous grant support, which has been instrumental in bringing this event to life. The Thompson Center was established to honor the legacy of Governor Tommy Thompson, who worked across party lines to advance the public good. Today, the center continues that mission by informing and inspiring current and future leaders, fostering leadership skills, and promoting effective public service. They host public events, fund research and scholarships, and honor exemplary leaders with the Distinguished Public Leadership Award, all across UW campuses, and all free and open to the public. To learn more about their upcoming events and opportunities, please visit the Thompson Center website. Now it's my pleasure to welcome Chancellor Gibson. Chancellor Gibson joined UWM in July and brings a strong commitment to student success, academic excellence, and community engagement. With a distinguished career in higher education, including leadership roles at UW-Stevens Point, Bowling Green State Universities, and others, he is dedicated to advancing UWM's mission of impactful research accessible education, and meaningful partnerships. A first-generation college graduate and respected educator, Chancellor Gibson brings a deep passion for transforming lives through higher education, and we are excited to have him lead us into a bright future. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Chancellor Gibson.
Thank you, Nancy, and good afternoon, everyone. It is so good to see each of you, and welcome to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. So I'm curious, as I survey the room and online, are there any folks in the room alumni of UWM? Fantastic. Fantastic. I'd love to see it. You know, everywhere that I go, I find Panthers that are just enthusiastic about their UWM journey, and I'm so impressed by the impact that I'd learned that they are making. And I'm also delighted to see such an enthusiastic audience that's interested in artificial intelligence. I have to believe that this topic truly stoked your curiosity. Artificial intelligence is here to stay, like it or not. Would you agree? Yes. And at UWM, we acknowledge that, and we are embracing it. That is why we are designing programs and courses that provide the skills that employers need and students want in today's job market. Many of our new degrees and certificates and micro-credentials are centered around AI, because if we are not harnessing AI, we are already behind. So sorry, Emma, if I stole some of your thunder here, but I'm so proud of our School of Continuing Education for offering events such as this tonight. We are all eager to know where AI will take us. Meanwhile, I urge you to explore what else our School of Continuing Education offers that might spark your curiosity. At UWM, we are committed to offering lifelong learning opportunities from elementary school to retirement. So thank you again for coming tonight. I'm excited for our program, and I hope you will come back for many more events in the future. So let us now enjoy the presentation.
Thank you, Chancellor Gibson. Now, I have the distinct honor of introducing our guest speaker today, Emma Roloff. Emma has always been passionate about education and pursued a career as a high school teacher. However, instead of educating children about social studies, she now teaches adults about the importance of digital literacy and people-driven change. With a background in teaching and over a decade of experience helping companies navigate their digital transformation journeys, she brings a unique perspective to the table. Emma's diverse experience across various industries enables her to identify patterns and facilitate insightful discussions for across vertical lines. Emma Roloff is the co-founder and chief growth officer of Roloff Consulting, a digital transformation expert and a host of a podcast, Leading Change, where she draws on her educational background and decades of experience to help leaders adopt modern strategies for growth and connection in digital-first world. Emma has had the opportunity to conduct over 200 expert interviews in the realm of digital transformation and innovation. Her contributions in the field have recognized her through accolades such as the RISE 35 Under 35 Award, inclusion in Lightco's Insurance Innovators Top 100, and being honored as the industry influencer by InsurTech Hartford. Please join me as we welcome Emma Roloff.
Thank you. All right. So a large portion of what I do is creating content about digital transformation, AI, change management, and leadership. Oh, hold on, this guy's not working. Do I need to turn it on? There we go. And I create that content on LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. And when I first started that whole journey about 5 years ago, I was creating mostly on LinkedIn, and there it's a nice, happy place where people just say things like, good job and congratulations. And I started intentionally creating content on TikTok as a way to get different insights and be able to get people's real, true opinions about what's happening in their companies, how they're seeing change navigated, and have a different level of discussion. And I didn't get much pushback even when I started on TikTok until I created my first video where I said, AI isn't gonna steal your job. And you know how you know you've really gotten under someone's skin? Is when they start to come after you for your physical appearance and things you can't change. And I get comments like this on a regular basis. It's amazing watching AI quote experts on TikTok looking like soccer moms who look like they barely graduated college. And the reason that I get these types of comments, along with things calling me a propaganda mouthpiece, this person didn't like my eyebrows, and saying things like, you're just out here speaking corporate gobbledygook, is because the idea of AI makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And honestly, I don't think that they're in the wrong because of the way that we see artificial intelligence presented. And the reason that I start this presentation this way is because I think it's important to recognize that I'm having this conversation about AI changing our jobs and not necessarily stealing them the same way that people tend to kind of think about artificial intelligence on a daily basis. And I can confidently say that I have yet to have somebody say something that has genuinely changed my mind. And despite what that commenter said, I am a soccer mom. My 6-year-old says it's her thing. But I did graduate college pretty well off, and now I have spent the last decade of my life in the space of enterprise transformations, working with some of the biggest companies, like your garbage disposal, probably created by one of my clients while I was selling software. I've had the opportunity to be very close to how we adopt technology and how it shifts and changes our roles over time. And I am very confident that we can talk through the fact that it's not going to change our jobs, or it's not going to steal our jobs, but it is going to change them. And today we're going to focus on some of the skills that you can use to balance out the technology and be able to move forward with confidence rather than fear. And I think it's really important to stop and think through why we have so much fear associated with artificial intelligence, and really kind of look at the broader scape of the world that we live in and the way that we interact with news media and social media and all the like. When I was creating this presentation originally, going back to the TikTok side of things, I ran my own little experiment. I created 2 videos. You can see even my hand gestures are the same between these 2 videos that were almost identical to one another. But there was one key difference. One video, I was soliciting negative feedback from my audience, and the other video, I was asking for positive feedback. The rest of it was pretty much exactly the same. Show of hands, or actually shout it out. What do you think got more engagement, the negative video or the positive? That was my hypothesis too, but I was honestly surprised at how significantly I saw a difference. So I had 3 times the likes and 3 times the comments on the negative video than I did the positive video, and they had roughly the same number of views, and they were posted within like minutes of one another. We have a propensity to focus on negativity. And when we look at things like news headlines, we're all living and working in a world where the news and everyone who's trying to capture your attention knows that you are 63% more likely to click on a headline or consume information if it's negative. And taking it even one step further, there's been some study around this from a psychological perspective. And when you look at the way that we explain emotions and the language that we have to talk about that, out of the top 28 words that we use to describe feelings and emotions, only those blue ones that are highlighted are positive. And when we look at all of the language that we have to talk about our emotions, there's over 558 words, and only 38% of them are positive. We are primed to take in the negative and remember the negative and ignore the bright spots that we see. And so what my goal is today is to take you guys through this journey of starting to reframe the way that you think about AI. We're gonna take that sad little cloud and we're gonna turn it into a happy rainbow. And the way that we're gonna do that is by talking about AI as a tool. And I know little Mr. Stabby Hands is like quite the jump from the rainbow, but AI is a tool. Technology as a whole is a tool. And it comes down to how we use it and the way that we decide to interact with it. So this knife clearly is aggressively held in this photo, but they could be opening a box, they could be cutting vegetables. It all comes down to the intention behind the tool. And so I want to start by this kind of reframing activity and talking through why I have the stance that AI is not going to steal your job. And I can almost guarantee that there's a couple of you, at least, in the audience that are thinking to yourselves like, Emma, I don't know, I've heard some things. As recently as the article about the canary in the coal mine. So this article was released a couple of weeks ago, and it stated that 13% of entry-level jobs in AI-impacted areas, industries, are no longer available. Which, again, I'm not gonna go against their research and their data, but when I start to think about the jobs that we see that are going away, and I start to think about AI's impact associated with that, and PJ on the continuing ed team and I were having quite a lengthy discussion about this before, I start to wonder how much AI is playing the game, or playing the role of the scapegoat. And how much of these jobs that we see that are being replaced by AI are genuinely being replaced by artificial intelligence. Specifically in the technology industry, where we see most of the job replacement being pointed towards AI, there's factors like how quickly so many of the tech companies grew during the COVID era, how much they increased the salaries of the people that they were trying to recruit during that time, how many of them have invested incredibly heavily in creating AI platforms that haven't returned any sort of sales or true dollar amount to them. How many other companies over the last number of months have pulled back on their spending and played conservative when it comes to purchasing new software platforms or making purchase decisions as a whole, and how much is that impacting sales and financials of these companies that are going through these layoffs? I have a feeling the truth is somewhere in the middle. I haven't done an exhaustive study in the last couple of weeks since the canary in the coal mine came out, but the truth is this technology is going to change things, but when we look at the headlines and the narratives that are coming out, there's a pattern that I've started to see. So on this far side, Salesforce's CEO says that his company has cut 4,000 customer service reps as AI steps in. Quote, I need less heads. He made a very public statement that they no longer need those people because they are internally adopting their software, which, by the way, hasn't actually led to any sales for them. And from what I've heard from people that have experimented with the tool, it's not that impressive. But he's been able to cut 400 heads, also questionable how he's talking about his people. Then below that, we have Anthropic CEO saying a big warning that all entry-level jobs will go away. Then, on the other side, just this week, I made a joke. I didn't pay him to say this, but Walmart's CEO came out and said down here, literally every job is going to change with AI. Notice he didn't say that Walmart is an AI-first company. He didn't say that there will no longer be the need for people. He said it's going to change people's job. Then above that, we have AWS, Amazon Web Services CEO, saying it's one of the dumbest things he's ever heard, that companies are going to replace entry-level workers with AI. There's one key difference between the people that are saying one message and the people that are saying the other. The people that are selling us AI solutions are telling us that you can cut headcount drastically. You're going to gain so much efficiency, you're no longer going to need people. Then we've got substantial business leaders. One of them who is one of the biggest partners of most of these AI companies, coming out and saying, it's gonna change things, but it's not going to eliminate all human productivity. And so when you hear these messages and this conversation of AI is going to take all entry-level jobs and there's going to be no need for you, so get ready for the universal income, it's people that are selling these tools. Salesforce's CEO has also sat down on CBS and had a sit-down conversation where he said they're no longer hiring engineers. They no longer need software engineers because they're so effective. I went and looked at their website and there were over 600 engineering jobs there. They're talking out of both sides of their mouth while they're doing this, and most people just read the headlines and get scared and get paralyzed by that fear. But when we look at the trends, and past software salesperson here, we look at the messages that are used to sell, fear is the #1 sales rep, and it has sold more than I did, and I was very good at my job. Back 10 years ago, Cisco's CEO during their Cisco Live conference said at least 40% of all businesses will die in the next 10 years if they don't figure out how to change their entire company. Well, guess what? They're all still here. And it probably wasn't a technology transformation that eliminated some of the companies that fell down. Because there's still over 80% of companies have some sort of legacy technology in the background, even if their customers don't see it. We are still very far away from the reality of companies being able to fully adopt artificial intelligence at the level that a lot of people would be led to believe by the headlines that we have in front of us. Again, that doesn't mean that there won't be disruption. That doesn't mean that you don't have to see the writing on the wall and adapt and build other skills, but you cannot be paralyzed by the fear that AI is coming to replace us all. There's been studies that have been done, and there's multiple reasons for this, but by the year 2030, it's estimated that there is going to be a gap of 85 million skilled workers across the world. Now, this spans across industries and across countries, so it's not all just here in the United States. But there is a need for people, and there's a need for people that cannot be completely absorbed by technology. And there's a couple of factors that are causing this labor gap that we see, and one of them is a lack of awareness around certain types of jobs. So you might have heard in my introduction, there was a couple of mentions of insurance and insurtech, and I do a lot of work with companies that are in that insurance space. The talent gap and the amount of people that are needed to fill it is staggering in the insurance industry. And a large portion of it is due to how many people are set to retire. So there is a massive aging population in that industry that are likely going to retire, and I think this is actually closer to, they've been saying the next 10 to 15 years, so that kind of ebbs and flows depending on the data that you're looking at. But when millennials were surveyed, and I don't have accurate data about Gen Z, but when they were surveyed, 80% of millennials said that they've never considered a role in the insurance industry. So we have this massive fire hose of people leaving the industry and a small trickle coming in. And having like worked within this space a lot, it's like a joke that no one goes into insurance on purpose because no one knows that the jobs that are there are available. And with that kind of gap that we have and that lack of awareness, technology cannot fill it completely. So even if things like data entry are automated or other portions and parts of the roles that are needed in that industry disappear, there is still a massive talent gap that needs to be filled by people. Now, beyond that lack of awareness, there's also a number of different industries that kind of have this like outdated perception side by side with it. And the first thing that comes to mind for me is manufacturing. And when we look at like information tied to the manufacturing industry, only 30% of Americans who were surveyed said that they would suggest that their child look at a manufacturing job. Want to know one of the industries that is experimenting with and pushing forward technology more than anybody else? It's manufacturing. And when you look at the 78% of millennials reported seeing manufacturing as outdated and not something they'd want to go into. Yeah, maybe the manufacturing floor, but there are multiple different departments and verticals that are behind that operation that support it and are, again, cutting edge roles. So when we look at all of these different industries that I go around and I talk to and I worked with while I was selling software, the conversation of where are we gonna get talent is one of the top problems that these industries have. So they're not talking about AI replacing everybody's jobs. They're saying, how are we going to backfill all the people that we have leaving? And so that leaves opportunity for automation and technology to come in, but also new people and new talent if we're looking in the right places. And as I've mentioned a couple of times now, when we look at this talent gap and we look at what we all have to do to respond to AI, is there's a skills evolution that has to happen. And this rapid evolution of skills is part of why we see this massive like prediction of talent gap coming across the world. And that's because some of the stuff that we do day in and day out right now isn't going to exist. But 5 years from now, there's going to be a whole bunch of things that we don't do today that we're going to need to do. And there was a study done a couple of years ago where they asked Gen Z students that were seniors in high school, what do you want to be when you grow up? And most of the people interviewed, 54% of them, said that what they want to do probably doesn't exist. That they feel like they are going to build their career and have a job title that doesn't exist today. Over half of the Gen Z students that were interviewed said that. And honestly, I would agree with them. So my brother's here, so there's our grandma. And that's baby Emma. And when I think about this, I think about myself. So our grandma passed away about 15 years ago. And if I could go back in time and sit down to have a conversation with her, I could say to her, hey, Grandma Katie, guess what? I'm a consultant. And in theory, she would understand what that means. But then if I was like, oh yeah, I'm a consultant who creates a bunch of content online on all of these platforms that you've never heard of before, that all like popped up since you passed away, and I also consult on emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, she would have no concept of what any of that means. So I have the same job title. Consultant has existed for a very long time. Speaker has existed for a very long time. The ideas of what I do and what my day-to-day job looks like is completely foreign to even a decade ago. And so when we look at this transition of how we look at artificial intelligence and the roles that we have available, there is a transition that's going to take place. And while some jobs will go away, other jobs will be created. And it doesn't always mean it's a like for like in the same skill sets, but there is opportunity and it is going to come forward. And there are things that none of us even have the concept of that we'll be talking about a decade from now. And so what I want to talk about is where we see some of those changes coming out and also do a little bit of what I call like digital literacy education. So I read a book a couple of months ago that I think like articulated this idea perfectly. It's called AI Snake Oil, and it's written by a couple of Stanford professors. And in it, they talked about the way that we speak about artificial intelligence in our language. And they used the analogy of, we use the umbrella term of artificial intelligence to talk about all of the different technologies that fall under that umbrella. If we did that with transportation, we would only be able to speak about vehicles. So I got here in a vehicle today. You got here in a vehicle. You got here in a vehicle. And when I, went to Paris, I went there in a vehicle. And when we went across the lake the other day, we did that in a vehicle. And my 6-year-old took her vehicle down to Grandpa and Grandma's house last week. The way that we use language surrounding this technology is so limiting. And again, when we go back to headlines, everything is artificial intelligence. And it feels like everything all of a sudden is artificial intelligence, and that it's all of a sudden super powerful and like out of control. But the technology has been around since the 1950s. Yes, it's gotten better, and it's rapidly increasing in its capabilities. But it's been around, and there are multiple different subsets of technology that fall under this umbrella term. So when we look at artificial intelligence, and some people might have a different, I actually got into a debate on TikTok with somebody about this the other day. Some people have the definition of artificial intelligence as being artificial generalized intelligence or general intelligence and being able to know all and do all. And if it's not that, then it's not AI. My definition is technology that is meant to mimic capabilities of the human brain. It is seeking the opportunity to extend what our brain is capable of and create that with a tool. But when we look at these different subsets, there is a different subset that can replicate one little part of what you can do. And then we've had to develop something else, and it's another little part. And so when we look at all of these different tools, one of the different tools that falls under this umbrella term is computer vision. Sounds exactly like it is. It's when we look at video feeds and other visual inputs and take that visual input and derive something meaningful for a computer. So it's taking images or video and turning it into ones and zeros in a way that makes sense to a computer. Then we have another subset for speech technology. I have to be careful because I don't want to set everybody's watches off or phones off, but we all interact with speech technology on a regular basis with our voice assistants and other ways of interacting with this technology. And this is being able to take spoken word and, again, derive meaningful information for a computer. But that can't really operate on its own. Usually it's coupled with natural language processing. And natural language processing is also usually coupled with computer vision to be able to take whatever those visual or auditory inputs are, especially if it's language or what we're writing, and turn it into something that the computer can understand. Because when I use slang or I speak in my Wisconsin accent and all of the rest of that and use specific terms, if I'm not talking exactly in the way that the computer would understand, natural language processing is essentially needed as that translator. Then we have kind of a subcategory of artificial intelligence, which is intelligent automation. So it's little bits and pieces of this technology kind of being slapped on to tools that we already have in existence. So being able to add just a layer of one of these onto a tool like robotic process automation, or add it onto a tool like workflow, so that it maybe knows a little bit more about where it needs to route a decision or a document. The last part, and there are many more than what I have the time to go through right now, but the last big one is machine learning. And I would say machine learning is kind of like the shiny little star. And this is actually where I got into the debate. Someone was saying it's not artificial intelligence, which is silly to me. But machine learning is the ability to recognize patterns and try to replicate the way that we can look at the world and recognize patterns or see things, but the potential of machine learning is that it can do it at a scale much larger than we as an individual brain would be able to do. The reason that I bring up all of these different subsets is specifically if you ever end up in a position where you're talking to someone who's selling software or someone who's talking about AI, they'll do things like say, well, we have AI and machine learning, which is kind of being like, our flower store has flowers and roses. And again, it's how we use the language and how that language might be bent in a way that would lead you to think a solution is more powerful than it is, or get you to think that something is capable of this all-knowing, all-being, every shooting star we've ever thought of, when in reality, machine learning can essentially be souped up workflows, like I was saying in this intelligent automation component. So when we talk through artificial intelligence at this level, you start to see that computers can replicate portions of what we can do. But it takes this whole subset of artificial intelligence for a computer to be able to understand what I'm saying right now to all of you. And it's a collection of technologies that all have to come together and expertly be orchestrated in order to drive a portion of what your brain is capable of doing. So when we start to, again, kind of put ourselves side by side with this technology, suddenly our brains get a little bit more impressive because you recognize all of the stuff that's not on the table when it comes to what we've been able to recreate with the tools. And so when, oh, I forgot, I added this one for today. The last piece is generative AI, which I think we all have probably, I mean, raise your hand if you've experimented with ChatGPT, Perplexity. Okay, so most of us have interacted with some sort of generative tool. Generative AI, again, is typically coupled really closely with machine learning in these large language models that have been trained essentially on the whole internet at this point. And it is recognizing those patterns, and what it's doing is when you ask it for an output, it's saying, recognizing the pattern that you've asked me to, here's what the most likely result would be. But generative AI is also not perfect, and it hallucinates, and sometimes it gets the pattern wrong, and sometimes if you don't prompt it the right way, it generates the wrong thing. And so there's all sorts of variability. So again, it may be able to create, but can it create at the same capacity that the rest of us can? And there's plenty of ethical questions surrounding the data it's been trained on and the intellectual property that it's using to create the outputs that it has. But when we look at the United States as a whole and kind of how we're going to start interacting with this technology more and more and more, according to the World Economic Forum, we have a 94% exposure rate to AI. And I would say based off of how many hands were kind of raised when I asked that question about ChatGPT, that's pretty accurate, especially when you start to think about every time you sit down for Netflix and it prompts you with a suggestion, or you have Spotify on shuffle and it pulls up a song that it thinks you're gonna like. All of that is driven by algorithms. And so we have this very large, oh, I skipped ahead a slide. We have this very large exposure rate, but then when we look at how much it's going to disrupt the current skill sets that we're using in the workforce today, by 2030, it's predicted that there will be about 35% replacement or disruption of the skills that we're using. 35% is not eliminating all human work. And I just want to kind of paint the picture, one more kind of piece tied to how these different technologies come into things that you're exposed to. So I already mentioned the idea of Netflix, but when you sit down and it gives you a suggestion of what you should be watching, it's pulling from machine learning, and depending on what you're searching, potentially a natural language processing. Then when we get into, how many of you have used like an AI note taker on a meeting? Yeah, I think most of us. So again, that's pulling in speech technology, It's using natural language processing to understand what's going on in the call. And then if it gives you some sort of summary or output at the end that gives you next steps or that kind of thing, it's using some sort of generative capability on the back end to kind of prompt you with what that would be. Then when we start getting into more specific industry examples, in insurance, one of the big things that's happening is fraud detection. And what that's really driven by is like a souped up pattern recognition, where it's been trained on fraudulent insurance claims and it knows the signs or the things that might tell you that something would be fraudulent. So and I know the industry, so if I get into a car accident and I report I got into a car accident and then 2 days later say like, oh yeah, and by the way, my brother Zach was in the car and he's really hurt. That's a sign that that is probably not accurate because you would have reported that at the time of the incident. So we have machine learning in the background that's recognizing those types of patterns. But guess what? Maybe I was really shaken up by that accident. And I was focused on giving them the information about my car. And they asked if I was hurt, and I didn't really think about anything else. And I didn't know Zach was hurt, and I didn't think it mattered because they insure the car. And I have to call and I have to tell them that there are exceptions. And so even though we can use machine learning in that scenario, there still has to be a human in the loop tied to how we're driving those types of decisions. And then when we look at things like medical imaging and radiology, we can have AI side by side with a radiologist reviewing images where it's pulling in that computer vision component. It's been trained on probably millions of images, and then it's also kind of pulling in some of the language and being able to contribute to a real conversation back and forth with the doctor about the risks that it sees. So you can see, again, each and every one of these use cases is pulling from multiple of these different tools to be able to replicate a little part of the process. And more often than not, there's still a human in that loop, especially when something is tied to decision making. So going back to the World Economic Forum, I want to kind of talk through where we see disruption of those skills. So I mentioned that and this is a bit of an eye chart, so I'm just going to kind of like talk through it with you real quick. So we have current capabilities or capacity at the top for generative AI to be able to replace things. And when you start to look at, and I know it's very, very small on the slide, but if you look at the very top, it talks about AI and data analysis as where there is a current capacity for AI to replace it. And then that yellow line is where there is a high capacity over time for those skills to be replaced. Then when we come down to the very bottom of this, it's things like empathy and other soft skills that are tied to who we are as humans. And you can see there's a little bit of blue. There's some that's getting done now, but overall, in terms of like the overall capacity to be replaced, there is a very low likelihood of our true human skills being able to be taken. And this is just specifically generative AI, so that doesn't mean that other tools won't emerge that maybe help with some of this. But the biggest takeaway that I want you to come through with here is that in a world full of AI, we all need to focus on sharpening our soft skills. Because what makes us human, and the things that truthfully, when we look at where we train, what we focus on when it comes to job opportunity, and all of the tactical and technical things, are at risk of being replaced by the technology. The things that bring us back to who we are at our core as humans don't have the same risk of replacement. And when we start to lean into these automations and the technology, we start to be even more thirsty for these human skills and these human components of who we are. Raise your hand if you've heard of the idea of AI slop. Okay, so AI slop is a slang term online that's used to refer to AI-generated content online. How many of you, raise your hand, can tell if somebody has just used ChatGPT and thrown it into an email? Okay, I'll give you some hints. If there's M dashes, if there's 3 things kind of in a row, if it opens with, in this ever-changing world. These are signs and signals that ChatGPT or generative AI is being used in the background to pull forward. I don't know about you, raise your hand, but when you see these things that are clearly AI generated or have not had any human touch, do you feel a little like, ugh? Okay, I see some head nods. We want authenticity. We want humanity. And that is only going to become more and more important as we have more AI all around us. And so where I want to kind of take this is focusing in on specifically the skills that you should be leaning into as we continue to see more adoption of AI. So we've already established soft skills are really important. And again, another eye chart, I promise I zoom in here, but I want to give you the whole landscape here. Along the bottom is different industries that were interviewed by the World Economic Forum as a part of their Future of Jobs report. And along the side are a whole bunch of different skills that they've categorized. And in between are what employers ranked as becoming more important over the next 5 years. So this is the 2025 report, and this is the delta of employers saying, this is important today, but it's going to be more important in the future. When I look at this, and I'm going to pull it up, the only area, so you can see, this is the only area where there's a dark blue line, which dark blue is across the board. The employer said this is going to become more important. AI and data analysis, or data, is the only line where most employers said it's going to become more important. Then, when we look at the soft skills, you can see there's even some negative numbers. And like the most concerning is that there's negative numbers like next to reading and math. So there are employers out there that are saying AI is going to be so important that I don't care if my employees know how to read. So when I look at this data, I think, well, that's silly. But I also think this is a signal that every single one of you in this room and everybody who's online needs to take individual ownership of your skills development in this soft skills category. Because employers, and truthfully, the way that we have thought about education coming from a past teacher, oftentimes focuses on technical skills. When you get a new job, they teach you how to use the software. When you're promoted to be a manager, they say good luck. And that trend is holding true in this data. But when we look at our own opinions and our own thoughts on the world, and also the way that we're going to need to balance out this technology, those skills are going to become so important. And if you can take the time to recognize that right now in this current moment and prepare for it, you are going to be so valuable. Because they're not telling you that you need to go after it. You're seeing the writing on the wall and making the decision to take control over the way that you're going to attack AI and the way that you're going to balance it. And so a couple of the different skills that I think are going to be incredibly important are the traditional soft skills. So on that graph, empathy was listed. Take a look at things like communication, leadership. I made the joke about management. These are things that are important now, but are going to become even more important moving forward. So when it comes to building those skills, there are things that you can do to lean into them. So when you look at something like empathy, practice stopping when you're real mad at someone. And like write down what their viewpoint would be in that scenario. I work a lot in the insurance industry. Claims professionals are constantly role-playing so that they can practice being empathetic when you call them having the worst day of your life. That can't be replaced by AI. And I have said it on countless podcasts. If I get into a car accident and my kids are in the back and I'm routed to some stupid AI chatbot, I'm gonna lose it. Because I want to talk to a person who I know is going to take care of me and who understands what I'm feeling and is going to guide me through the process. I don't want to go to your app. I'm a millennial. Guess what? That doesn't hold true. There are scenarios where empathy is incredibly important. From a communication standpoint, practicing explaining ideas, and like specifically explaining ideas like you would to my 6-year-old daughter. Being able to sit down and communicate at that level means you truly understand it and you can communicate it to anybody. That's a way to build that skill. And when it comes to leadership, take every opportunity that you have to facilitate a Zoom call, to operate in a classroom in some sort of leadership capacity. Take ownership over the group project, whatever that might be. There are ways for you to practice these skills, and specifically mentorship is also really important in this. So go find somebody who's really good at these skills that can help you. A couple of years ago, when I was still working in my software sales role, our CEO was a CFO by trade. And numbers guy, he's very nice, but like publicly communicating and being able to do things that a CEO has to do, especially during the COVID timeframe, was super outside of his comfort zone. And he knew he needed to build his communication skills. And then across the hallway, he had this sales girl who was constantly making YouTube videos and TikToks. And he thought to himself, you know what? She might be younger, but she can be a mentor for me in this scenario. And so he pulled me into his office one day and he said, I know I need to get better at communicating. And right now, our team is remote. And I need to get better at communicating over video. I'm gonna make a weekly video for the team. I want you to watch it and watch it differently than everybody else does. I want you to watch it to give me feedback. And so we used that like interaction and that mentorship to help him build that skill. Critical thinking is a soft skill. And we need to practice more of it. And it's going to become really important in a data-rich world. So the more we automate, the more data comes at us. And the more information that's coming towards us, we need to be able to critically think about it and drive decisions. Because especially in the corporate world, there is a lot of risk associated with allowing the technology to make decisions. So the part that you are going to play in that whole process is most likely going to be decision making. So practice analyzing. Look at case studies of the way that companies have done things. If you look at Harvard, case study-based learning is one of their core tools. Spend time reading about businesses, the way that decisions are made, and the focus on analyzing data in a different way. Go read the jobs report and look at those tables and that information and critically think about what's coming in front of you. And then the last skill that I want to put out there is this idea of intentional focus. And I used to call it multitasking, but people get angry at me when I say that because we're not good at multitasking. But we need to practice this because there's so much noise around us. And the more that we rely on technology, the more we're going to have to balance our human skills and the part that we bring to the table and input from computers and data and information that's coming at us. And you have to practice that skill, and then also, more importantly, practice intentionally focusing. Time boxing. My husband just got a brick, and that, like where you lock your phone, and he's been pressuring me to do it more often. But so do these things, and these are all your core human skills that you can start building right now to make sure that you have the skills that are going to be needed to counterbalance the technology. And then the last piece, which I think most of you are probably already doing because you're here, but if I can get you to remember one thing from this entire time, it's that you need to build your digital literacy. You have to stay up to date with what's coming. Now, I'm not asking any of you to become a developer. I'm not asking you to become a technical person, but you have to spend the time building these skills so that you are prepared to understand how and where technology comes in and the things that are going to be changing in your job environment so that you can predict and then kind of prevent being displaced. You have to be forward thinking, and you can't get there if you put your head under the sand. I've talked a lot, and I saw my sign come up in the back that I've got just a couple of minutes here, so I'm gonna put this up here. You guys will all get, this is my TikTok, so keep that in mind. If you don't have TikTok and you want a different way, I have them on YouTube. You can come talk to me. But I have a video library of explainer content tied to all sorts of different technology. That makes it really approachable. Again, I've tested them with my kids. But we've talked a lot about artificial intelligence today. It's not the only technology out there, and it's not the only thing that's going to change the way that we interact with the world. And it's probably not even most likely the technology that you're interacting with the most or need to deeply understand the most. So I would suggest that everybody spend some time thinking through how we integrate all of our technology, what that looks like and how we create an ecosystem there. And then also focus in on the Internet of Things and all of the data that's coming. Because AI does not exist without those devices that are connected and all of the data that it gives it. So there is a connection there, and there is an understanding, and really like the internet of our behavior. It's shifting the way we do things pretty substantially. So that's a starting point for you on this digital literacy journey. The last thing that I want to leave you with is that your humanity is your superpower. And AI will change things. We will all look and interact with the world differently in 5 years than we do today. But human productivity, human connection, those things don't go away because we got a shiny new tool. And so lean into that, and you will end up in a space where you are far more comfortable with the technology that's coming at us. I'll leave that there. Thank you.
Questions for Emma? If there's any questions for Emma?
One of your eye chart slides,
Yeah.
one of them was global citizenship in the middle, comparing where AI is going to take that or become that or whatever. Why is that on that chart?
So that was one of the skills that it was comparing, I think, unless I'm thinking of the wrong chart. Was it the one with the orange?
Yes.
Okay, my guess would be how we gather information and the way that we consume information would probably be why the global citizenship component in there is. Truthfully, I didn't focus too deeply on that component, but the Future of Jobs report is available online. It's a quite hefty document, but they do have some definitions of those different categorizations in there, and then some explanation for why they believe the displacement is going to happen. But tied to that idea, I would think that it's probably information gathering and how we perceive the world being impacted and affected by AI. So different roles that are a part of that process and the different information that might come towards us there. But I can certainly, if we've got time after this, I can look and see if I can pull it up on my phone.
Okay, thank you.
The next question in the back over there, Ray shirt.
Yes, I am an educator, and I'm certainly happy that you have a background in education too. As we work with students, how do we help students learn those fundamental soft skills and also basic skills like reading and writing, which I can't imagine that you could navigate the internet without being able to read. How do we get them to do that without taking shortcuts because they know they can and it's really easy? And they have a million things going on. Like, I'm not saying their intentions are nefarious, just it seems so much faster. How do we get them to invest in the core learning they need to do?
So now this is my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. I think we have to more intentionally integrate technology into the classroom, specifically within the K-12 system. When I look at my generation, like the millennial generation, and the way that we grew up and the way that we interacted with technology, we grew up alongside it, which naturally meant that we were learning it as it was coming out, which obviously was an advantage. But more often than not, schools do not have separate technology classes the way that they used to have. And so I had a technology class with like a Mac lab for anybody that's millennial, like those colored Macs, where we learned how to type, We learned how to do a Google search. We had papers where we had to cross-check what we were finding online compared to what we had in the library. Not that you're not doing those things today, but there was intentionality behind technology as a discipline to learn. And then it wasn't thought of as something that we would learn through osmosis. And as I watch my kids go through the school system, they are very fortunate to be in a great school district that has all sorts of access. My 4th grader came home with her Chromebook the other day, and it was essentially scanned pages of her history book. And I'm an old social studies teacher with like a multiple choice question, and she had to like scroll back and forth and like zoom in, and she's interacting with the touch screen and the touch screen alone, and she's very quick and speedy. But then when it took time for her to type, it was like 3 sentences took 15 minutes because they've done nothing to teach her how to type other than give her a game and tell her it was a club that she could do at home with her Chromebook. So the way that we teach technology is as a way to digitize what we've done for a very long time and then removing the intentionality behind the technology component. And so my thought process on how we do this is potentially focusing more on our traditional teaching techniques within the classroom for things like math and reading and those core skills that we know that we have a little bit of a crisis surrounding right now, and focus on placing back that intentional technology time as a way to give kids the opportunity to learn how to interact with that technology. Because what we're seeing with Gen Z right now as they enter in the workforce is there's actually a pretty substantial tech gap, and self-reported, Gen Z does not feel prepared to interact with technology in the workforce because of the way that it has been taught through osmosis. And so, especially when it comes time for things like AI and that kind of thing, I think even at an individual subject level, there's opportunities for us to say, okay, you could write this essay with AI. Go home, write this essay with AI, and then come in, and in the class, we're gonna spend time editing it by hand, and you're gonna spend time thinking through what it did differently than how you would have, and looking for the signs and the signals that you can pay attention to, that we all pay attention to know that this is AI slop work. And that obviously isn't like an all-knowing answer, but I think that we need to be more intentional as teaching it as a discipline, as opposed to something that just digitizes those other subjects.
I'll be respectful of everyone's time. So again, thank you, Emma.
Yes,
again,
thank
for
you.
your time and your insights. That's what I heard, over and over again. That's what I heard. But I want to welcome Jacob Fink up to the podium over here for our panel. As Jacob's getting ready to introduce our panel, I want to introduce Jacob. Jacob is a data analyst at Geneva Capital Management. In this role, Jacob creates a variety of financial reports, which gives insights into the movement of style factors and provides transparency into the risk factors of proposed investment strategies change. He uses Python to automatically scan portfolios for change, summarizing investment performances, and creating new innovative risk report techniques. Prior to joining Geneva, Jacob was an equity risk analyst at Wells Fargo's Asset Management and an investment data analyst at Artisan Partners. Jacob also serves as the head equity trader for 2 other firms in the Milwaukee area. Mr. Fink holds a BS in business economics from Wisconsin Lutheran College and a master's degree in applied economics from Marquette University. He received his CFA designation in 2011 and served as president of the CFA Society of Milwaukee in 2017 and 2018. Jacob also teaches for us at SCE the courses Python Next Level Business, Python for data analysis, and Microsoft Excel for analytics. Again, thank you, Jacob, for serving as our moderator for our panel, and Jacob will introduce our panel.
Thank you. The panelists come up then, and I can introduce them as well. Yep. So we have Amy Pahacek, Secretary of the Wisconsin Development of Workforce Development. She has led statewide efforts to modernize services, reduce employment barriers, and strengthen Wisconsin's economy since 2020. She has a background in government administration and crisis management, and she previously served as the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Corrections and directed numerous programs and operations for Milwaukee County. Under her leadership, Wisconsin has achieved record low unemployment, record high jobs numbers, and labor force participation rate consistently above the national average. And she holds degrees from UW-Madison and Northwestern University, and she's a graduate of University of Virginia's Senior Executive Institute. So thank you, Amy, for being here. We also have Ian McCullough. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Amy. We also have Ian McCullough, or Cullough. He's a Milwaukee-based multidisciplinary artist. He's a producer and computer engineer with a degree from Marquette University. As the founder of Free Music Land, he is at the forefront of leveraging technology, including blockchain and open source principles, to empower musicians and content creators in the evolving digital landscape. With a unique background spanning both the creative arts and technical engineering, Ian brings a vital perspective on how emerging technologies like AI are reshaping the creative economy. He offers insightful analysis into new opportunities and inherent challenges that artificial intelligence presents for artists, musicians, and innovators in today's world. So thank you, Cullough. Israel Squires is a professional with Midpoint Consulting, specializing in the practical application of AI. His expertise lies in helping businesses with AI adoption and strategy, offering guidance how to implement these technologies to get tangible results. Squires is well-versed in the challenges and opportunities businesses face when integrating AI and can provide actionable takeaways for attendees. And thank you. All right. And then we have AI product strategist and ubots.ai founder. He's a creative agency veteran turned full-time AI developer, Nate St. Pierce. He specializes in building user-friendly AI tools that help people work smarter and reclaim time for what matters. His work spans Fortune 500 clients, national campaigns, and award-winning social goods projects across the tech and media landscape. So thank you for panelists for being here. Really appreciate that. So my first question for all of you, just in one sentence, is what is the biggest way that AI is already changing your field or your life? You can't do it in one sentence. Okay, well.
Mic check.
There we go.
Very loud. Quick adjustment on my title. Our company was just acquired by Blackline out of Chicago. So now I'm the AI innovation lead for Blackline, no longer the CEO of Midpoint Consulting, but a very cool acquisition for us. Super exciting, like just closed on Friday. So it's like actually the first time we're talking about it. Thank you. Very cool. Okay, one sentence. I'm going to go the engineering path for software engineers, and I'm going to say Cursor 1.2 has turned the all-star software engineers into superhumans.
Nice. Thank you.
So, good evening, everybody. I'm Amy Pahacek. I'm the Secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development. That means my boss is the governor, Governor Tony Evers, and I run one of the largest agencies in the state as a cabinet secretary. And the Department of Workforce Development, if you don't know what we do, we are charged with preparing Wisconsin's workforce for the 21st century and beyond. So I have been in this role for 5 years, and that means for 5 years, we have really been going through what we are dubbing the fourth industrial revolution, which is what we see the impact of AI having on the workforce, if you just heard from our esteemed presenter. And so it has flipped literally almost everything we do on its head. And I'll speak a little bit more about that and the resources that we have available for everybody in this room and everybody in this state. But it has completely changed how we look at workforce preparation and how we train for the future.
Let's hold this back here. I will say, in like 2 or 3 sentences, I'll put on my CMO hat. 2 years ago at this time, 2 years ago, 2 summers ago, I don't have a career, I just do the next thing. I've had like 400 different things I do. But I'm an agency strategist and a CMO for startups on the coast a lot of times, and I have no problem getting a job. 2 years ago, I was having a big problem getting a job, and I hadn't even touched AI yet. I'm almost a little under 2 years of using AI, and I started just playing around with it to see how much it could do of my job, and I realized that properly prompted and properly contextualized, AI could probably do about 80% of the front end of what I do as a content strategist, social strategist, and high-level CMO. And that's when I decided to jump into it and see if I could build things that would help me. And in doing so, I started helping myself, then other businesses, and now I run an AI tech company that helps everybody be better at everything by solving the context problem. But anyway, it has changed everything about my life and career in just a year and a half.
Hi there, everybody. Cully here. From a musician's perspective, I would say it has changed the entire field in the way where one single musician can now have the tools of a whole team in a major label. So if properly prompted, gotta caveat a little bit, but, and same with the area of, in blockchain technology, having the ability to have the financial, legal, and administrative power that AI brings.
Cullen, one more question for you. What's one question that you wish more people asked about AI at work, but you rarely hear that question?
Great question. Yeah, the question that I am very laser focused in on when it comes to AI, from a musician's perspective, the intellectual property aspect of things. These are the assets that my songs, my publishing, my likeness, my voice, all these things are my property, and it is what even gives the whole field its entire value. So my question that I wish people would ask is, who owns the data? And earlier today, put the suit on and went over to the state capitol to testify. There was an assembly hearing for Financial Institutions Committee, and there was a bill introduced for digital assets and for permitting certain usages, essentially legalizing these new types of infrastructure that I think will have significant impact on how AI and that question of who owns the data will be affected. And so that is something I'm really interested in when it comes to the aspect of licensing and the aspect of ownership. I think we talk a lot about consumer protections with AI, and the idea of ownership sometimes feels like it never gets really addressed fully the way it should. So that's the question.
Amy, how do we ensure that we can retrain or reskill people to keep up with AI innovations?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And something that 5 years ago when I became the labor secretary kept me up at night. And so in conversations with the governor, we created the governor's task force on workforce and artificial intelligence. We had the brightest and the best minds come together to really answer that question. That is not something that one person can answer. We had to call on many individuals, including my esteemed co-panelist, Israel here. He was on that task force, but we also had representatives from Google, Microsoft, the universities of Wisconsin, K through 12, private sector industry, as well as labor, which is huge because at the forefront of all of our conversations and policy recommendations, and we do have a 45-page report on the blueprint of how to keep our workforce front and center and thriving during this industrial revolution, was the fact that we want people first, and it's about protecting our workers and economic opportunity here in the state of Wisconsin. And so those were our guiding principles. We came together. For those of you who aren't familiar with what the Department of Workforce Development does, which I suspect is probably almost everybody in this room, we run several of the state workforce programs, including unemployment insurance, including workers' compensation, equal rights, so we enforce all of the Fair Labor Standard laws in the state of Wisconsin, including the federal laws as it relates to Wisconsin workers. We also have job centers. We have over 50 job centers all throughout the state with career counselors, and we do upskilling, reskilling, resume writing. We support businesses. We do the apprenticeship for the state of Wisconsin, and we work with people with disabilities who are looking for competitive integrated employment. And so all of those different things that we do with about 2,000 employees around the state, we also have economists who are looking at all of these numbers. They're doing the Bureau of Labor Statistics reporting on our unemployment rate, our trends, and looking nationally at what is happening with the workforce so that we can keep our programs and all of our efforts relevant to prepare our state. And what we were looking at is in our task force, we had our economists come and present. Much like you saw today, we looked at those industries and occupations that were going to have the highest propensity of augmentation, said another way, disruption. But we focused that to Wisconsin. So we took our 5 major industries here in Wisconsin, which hopefully many of you know is agriculture, number 1, manufacturing is number 2, the other top 3 are tourism, education, and healthcare. So those 3 are not in that order. And then we looked at each of the different occupations and how many people in the state of Wisconsin are in those occupations with those categories that have the highest propensity for disruption. And I'm glad to say all of our data matched what we heard today from Emma, so I don't have to contradict anything that she said, but it was lots of information as it relates to data entry, customer service, an analytics with the big models where AI can look at patterns from millions of data points that no human is ever going to be able to do. That doesn't mean we're not going to have a human double check that and make sure it's not verifiable, but there are occupations that are going to change significantly. We know how many people in the state of Wisconsin are working in those occupations right now, and we came up with an entire layoff aversion plan, including upskilling, including obtaining grants. And if you right now are somebody who sits in a customer service role, again, doesn't mean your job's going to be eliminated, but I will tell you, even at the Department of Workforce Development, which is government, I run a government agency. We're typically the last to adopt things. Government is not known to typically be on the cutting edge, although I will present a different picture for you today. But we have AI-related chatbots that will answer now almost 90% of the questions. We still have a call center, we still have people, but my chatbots can talk in many different languages, can provide information in many different ways, and can knock out a lot of the wait time and frustration that people have trying to interact with a government agency, because we are providing accurate, transparent, and efficient information 24/7. So again, that's just if you're in those positions, please reach out. We have free resources. I have career counselors all over the state in those job centers or online. We'll come and meet you wherever you are. And if you need digital literacy training, if you need leadership training, if you don't know if you need training, we will do a skills assessment. We will give you clear data about where you live in the state and what jobs are growing and in demand and are projected to continue to grow. We can tell you the average wages of those jobs within a 20-mile radius of your zip code, right? I have so much data I am ready to share. My career counselors are ready to share with you about how best to prepare for the next step. And if you can't afford training, again, all of my services are free. And if you can't afford training and you can't afford to go back and get an AI degree, we're going to find you those certifications that are free, or we have grants, or our partners have grants. Microsoft made that big announcement. They're putting a lot of money into helping because they're putting up a data center that's getting a lot of pushback, and they are going to help. We've got money. So, and if you're an employer, this is the other thing in this 45-page recommendation, because this is important too. We have 50% of our workforce works for small businesses in Wisconsin. And we heard from Emma earlier that manufacturing, remember that's our #2 industry in Wisconsin, is leading the way in AI, and they absolutely are. I toured Rockwell Automation's floor. It is so automated, it is amazing. However, we know that 50% of people work for small businesses. That is the backbone of our main street, of our communities, and we need our small businesses to stay competitive in this global economy so that they aren't laying off our workers. I have $5 million of annual grants that I give out to businesses to train for technical, for leadership, for soft skills, for AI. The sky's the limit. So if you are an employer and you're listening to this, call my agency. We have an open grant application right now for upskilling workers. So it is on our employers, it is on our communities, it's on our workforce to get these skills. We have the resources. The last thing I'll say, and I know I'm talking too much, but K through 12 is also about how do we prepare our future workforce. And you heard it from our speaker. Our entire policy talks about making sure we have equal access to digital literacy. There are still people in the state of Wisconsin that do not have broadband, that can't even get on the internet. Okay, so our rural areas. We also have people in our urban centers that do not have the resources that many of our suburban areas do, and they are going to fall behind. We have seen this before in other industrial revolutions where we've got the digital divide. So we need access to resources for all of our kids in the state, for everybody. This is an opportunity to be an economic equalizer, and we also need to work on those soft skills. And that's exactly what I was going to say. We need critical thinking. We need leadership skills, we need communication skills, and focusing on that is the best way to prepare these kids for the future.
Thank you very much. Israel, from your consulting work, where's businesses actually seeing positive ROI from AI, and where are they just chasing hype?
Yeah, all right, so to be frank, and I'm gonna try to be really, really efficient here because there's a couple points I wanna get across. There's been a ton of money wasted this last few years by businesses that are chasing hype. Trying to build a chat bot as step one is like not the way you should probably go, okay? What's nice though is Amy just mentioned $5 million pool of capital. We gotta tap into that because everything that we focus on at Midpoint is the blocking and tackling work. Educating workers on how to prompt effectively, how to utilize the core basic tools, which are Microsoft Copilot, ChatGPT's, OpenAI's ChatGPT, and Gemini. Like that's Google Gemini. So you're either working at a Microsoft shop or working at a Google shop, and you're probably trying to figure out how to implement ChatGPT as well. So what we do really, really well to help businesses not make those mistakes. Because the answer is, for 2024, what was our greatest ROI with our clients? We helped them not waste money. We developed a strategy for them that was a pragmatic, step-by-step strategy, helping them identify how to get small wins, stack those small wins together, identify who their power users are within their workforce, focus on them, get them trained, get them optimized in how to create a custom GPT in ChatGPT or create an agent, as they call it in Microsoft Copilot, and understand the complexities of creating something simple just to do document review as a part of your everyday workflow and understand, as talked about in the keynote, that these tools are inaccurate. So for those that have used ChatGPT, I'm sure, how many here have been frustrated with ChatGPT? Look at that. If you just deploy the tools into your business without doing the blocking and tackling work, you're going to create frustration at scale. If you don't connect, I don't want to nerd out on you, but there's a lot of mistakes that are a zero-sum game. So the way that we help businesses is identify the power users. If you all are here today, high probability that you would be someone that we'd identify as a power user. You're putting in the work to learn. Digital literacy is the key. So you need to be the folks that can go in, if you're working in ChatGPT, you say, yeah, look, I'm really good at creating custom agents. I've created a bunch of stuff for my personal use. And more importantly, I've identified how to create validation systems around. So you three have a group project. You're gonna use ChatGPT. You need to get that report to me in a week. You're gonna have to do a whole bunch of research. But the most important part of that research is identifying the inaccurate outputs that you get from ChatGPT and what you're going to do about it. Because your task is to ultimately implement this tool to semi-automize a workflow. And that is not going to be done with any of these generative AI tools by itself. You have to have human in the loop, which is the validation model. So what I'm really looking for in terms of your deliverable is, we built this out, it's 94% accurate. We've tested it for the last 3 months. Here's the system that we need to deploy, meaning we need to train workers on these 3 things. And most importantly in that training is, hey, when you're utilizing this GPT, here's the validation that you need to go through, right? That's EQ. In order to effectively, as a group, identify what that validation needs to be, you need to take your experience in your role. Because as you see those inaccurate outputs, if you're on day 1 and you don't have that EQ built up, you're probably not going to identify that it's inaccurate. That's where your experience comes in. So for those that have been at your business for more than 5 years, you're in a very, very good position. Leverage your EQ, leverage your insight. But validation systems are the key. That's going to be the key. The future of AI and everything we're talking about, the skill that you need to develop is how to properly validate an output. That's the main skill. So I'll stop there.
All right, thank you. One quick question for Nate. How are you identifying pieces of work that are most amenable to AI tools, and what's your prioritization mechanism?
I think after this I'll go nerd out with you on all the contextual engineering and validation and back-end stuff. But I think right now, kind of to answer that question, this is hard. When I say this, people say you can't sell something that does everything for everyone. But the promise of properly prompted, properly contextualized Gen AI is that it can. One of my clients recently said it's like everyone in our company now has a little Iron Man suit strapped onto them and they're better at everything, right? Mm-hmm. So what I want to do, I think, you guys are all hearing us talk and we live in this stuff. So like we're talking at a very high level, most of us. What I want to do for everyone here and everyone whoever's watching, like I bet you there's a lot of people here who are like, I'm at the bottom rung here. Like I don't know what this can do for me and what it really looks like. I hear it, I'm learning it, but I want to experience it. So I'm going to give you something that you can do right now when you go home tonight. It's so simple, you don't even have to write it down. Like it's 2 steps. 1, this is how I started. This is how I started a year and a half ago, okay? And like I said, it totally changed my life. Go home tonight and you're gonna pay something, okay? It's $20 a month, but you're going to swap out one of those streaming services, the one you don't watch the most, right? Just kill that one. That's what I did. And you're gonna buy either ChatGPT Pro or Plus or whatever it's called, or Claude Plus, one of those 2. Go in there and create, it's either called a project in Claude or a folder in ChatGPT, okay? And I'll give you an example of what this looks like. This is going to be something that you're going to be able to put context into that it will remember and focus its output on, so it validates the right stuff, so it doesn't hallucinate. It comes back to what you want it to do and the way you want it to do, okay? And then you're going to play around with that, and you're going to see the power of how this stuff actually works in your own life in a way that's helpful to you in your personal life or your work life, whatever you choose. I'll give you an example of how that works. This is literally what I use this one every day, okay? And you don't even have to build a custom GPT. That's even a little more complex, but you don't even have to do that. All you have to do is give it some info. So, a year ago, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that forces me to eat certain things, certain ways, prep food. I have to do things a lot differently than I ever had to before. I've never been a cook. I've never cared about that. I eat chocolate all day, right? So for me, in my ChatGPT, I created a project or a folder called Healthy Eating. And in there, I just give it the information that I want. I am a 47-year-old man with this diagnosis. This is my history. This is what my typical food looks like. I've been told I need to do X, Y, and Z, okay? That's the project data. And now whenever I prompt it, whenever I ask it questions or I use the voice app and just talk to it like a person, it knows that that is the context. And at the end of that, I say, when I talk to you, I want you to help coach me to cook the right things the right way for my diagnosis in a way that is universally beneficial to me and help me understand things if I don't, okay? So it's acting like a coach and a health nutritionist. And don't take medical advice, obviously, I'm not saying that, but you know what I mean. This is just for like cooking healthy stuff, right? But for me, I'm sitting in the kitchen and I'm talking to this thing and I'm asking, how long do I cook this for this? What do I need to watch out for? How can I add more fiber to this thing, right? And it's just chatting back and I'm learning how to cook and I'm learning how to help myself, right? You can use it, like, that's just a personal example. I do this for a living, and like that context that I just said, that's why context is so important. What I do for a living now is my U-Bots gives that context, the entire organization, every person in every organization, all the bots have the exact context of the whole company, and whenever anyone prompts it, it understands the whole background of the company, and when they ask it, it doesn't give generic ass stuff like from ChatGPT Public, which everyone complains about. It replies back with actually your company, your strategy, your users, your employees, your customer, everything, right? So go buy this, make a project. That's the lowest common denominator, the lowest level you can do. Make a project, fill it with what you want, make sure it's focused on something that you are actually interested in or need to do, right? So in that sense, you will actually use it. And as you use it, you'll see the power, and you'll be like, oh, maybe I could use it over here. Maybe I could do another project for this thing over at my work. And you will actually see how you will get better at your work, and you can augment your own talents and skills, and you can upskill yourself. Programs are awesome, and we need those, and employers need to do that, but as an individual, this is something you can do to get in there, to play, and learn. I actually did it, I'm a creative writer and an editor, and I actually used it to do world building and world expansion. And my first exit was to a film studio in Hollywood because my world building tools became used for screenwriters in LA. Like 6 months ago, I sold that, right? And that was just for fun. Like my tools were just for me for fun, but they ended up being really good, and screenwriters started using them, and then they recruited me, and then they bought it, right? So anyway, as I was gonna say, like, just get in there and play around. You'll be surprised at what you can do, right? So.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the audience that we would like to take this time?
Sure. Oh, you didn't mention grok. Is that all hype, or is grok a real thing?
Grok's a real thing. I just don't use it. I don't use Gemini. I use Gemini instead of our background in programming stuff. But for me personally, I just like I was a creator influencer for many years too, and it's like, and like Emma's too, you kind of pick your lane. Like I'm not going to have 17 different social accounts. I'm going to be really good at TikTok, right? I'm going to be really good at one or two, right? For me, I'm really good at ChatGPT and Claude. Those are the two I picked. There's a million other ones that work.
Hi, Israel. You were talking about how you help companies leverage and begin to use AI, and you mentioned that you start with folks who are already using it to help you move forward, right? And then you help that company utilize AI more efficiently, correct?
Sure.
I'm really superficially hitting this. My question is, how do you help these companies and individuals who are the most resistant? Like, so within the company, the folks that are most resistant to AI, how do you help them begin to use AI or see the benefits of these tools?
Yeah, we hire a bunch of wrestlers. Educating them, right? Like, there are a lot of folks that are against it or resistant, afraid that, wait a second, am I like preparing my job to replace me and automate these tasks? And like, am I literally doing the work so I don't have a job? Like, that's the main fear. Like, am I putting in the work to ultimately replace me? And when you educate folks that, look, none of these tools as they currently stand are really in a position to replace you for the most part, they feel more, safe about it and peaceful about it. So educating them that, look, these tools, I mean, you can do it oftentimes. Again, given my question about how frustrated people get with ChatGPT, have one of these folks use ChatGPT for like an hour. See how frustrated they get with it. And just be like, I don't want to hire that tool. I want you to work for me. But we can enhance you with some tools. Let's figure out what we can do, right? So it's there's called EQ, but there's a lot of sort of psychology and change management and coaching, and those are things that we've actually done really, really successfully. But that still exists. If Amy knows this, we've been in touch for a few years now, and gosh, I was wrong in a lot of ways. I thought that we'd be past this by now, and no, I certainly did. Like, I totally thought that we would be past the fear, and that companies would be implementing AI way faster than they are.
The slowness has been more surprising than the speed.
Yeah, it's certainly, and AI is going fast. Things in the software world are going fast, but it's the human component. We're blockers, and that starts at the top. So In case I don't get another, I have to say this. For the ChatGPT users, has anyone used the Canvas capability, the feature? Like when you're prompting, say, do this in Canvas? One person, 2 people, 3, 4. Game changing. You gotta use it. So when you're prompting right now, what you're used to is copying and pasting into a Word document. Canvas pulls up a separate interface and allows you to edit the output in real time. You can reprompt line by line. I have to say that at everything I'm at because, I mean, this came on December, and here we are with 4 out of, the 80 or whatever that are users. So start your prompt or end your prompt or anywhere in your prompt. Say, do this in Canvas.
All right, in the interest of time, I think I've got one final question from someone online. They said, I've been out of the workforce for almost a year now. When I left, my institution had strict rules about no AI allowed in any of our work, meetings, materials, etc. My colleagues have told me that has already changed. How would you recommend I market myself as a potential hire as someone with no experience using AI in the workforce?
My best recommendation is to get some experience. There are free courses online. You can get a credential. You can get a certification. I'm sure the School of Continuing Studies has already said they've got AI. If you can't afford that, we can find you resources at the Department of Workforce Development through our job centers, and career counselors will help. We have grants, we have other things to help. The other thing I will just briefly mention is apprenticeship. Wisconsin leads the country in terms of apprenticeship, and everyone's probably like, why are you talking about apprenticeship? Because most people think of apprentices and they think of the trades, electricians, welders, and those plumbers. Those are some of our highest apprenticeships. But what's different about apprentice in Wisconsin is that we require a learn while you earn model, meaning you get paid not only for your hands-on work experience at an employer, but also for your associated time in the classroom. And in Wisconsin, we have apprenticeships in cybersecurity, IT, healthcare, quite honestly, and we are incorporating into all of our apprenticeships the AI and technology component because these occupations are changing. And so you can earn money while you go to school, no debt, and we've been breaking records nationally and here in the state of Wisconsin in terms of enrollment, and it's definitely a game changer, and it's one of the best tools we have to prepare our workforce, all of our workforce, for a competitive future without an economic barrier. So I'm going to say that if you want to do an IT or a cybersecurity apprentice, reach out to the job center. We can get you enrolled and we can help you.
Awesome. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, panelists. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Again, I want to thank the Tommy G. Thompson Center for Public Leadership for their sponsorship for this evening. Again, thank you, Emma, for your information, Jacob, Ian, Israel, Nate, and Amy for your expertise and sharing your time tonight. Don't forget to check out before you leave today, we have an informational table for the School of Continuing Education. We have information on AI topics that may be engaging to you. We have topics like AI and data ethics, AI-based product management integrated with Wave AI, artificial intelligence for HR professionals, artificial intelligence for marketing professionals, and more. So please do take a moment to look at the table. And also, before you leave, we have extra food left over out there. Again, I want to thank our caterers tonight, the Confectionally Yours by Cafe and Bakery, which is located on MLK and North Avenue, our Chef Adija and Chef Tanya. Thank you again for your wonderful food. And before you leave, if you have not gotten your parking validation, please do get that before you leave today again. So thank you again for joining us today. Be safe, everyone. Goodbye.